friends, I have a treat for you today. We have another guest, and I am excited for you to hear her story because it is a unique one and one that is quite different from other testimonies that we have had on the show. So, our guest's name is Marianne. Now, she does work for the government, so we are not going to be using her last name on this podcast. So, you will hear her as Marianne, and she is an adult adoptee who has changed her stance from pro choice to pro life. So it's really cool just to hear kind of how her life has been, what factors in her life have led her from where she once was to where she is now. And I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is Marianne on the Abortion Recovery for Christian Women podcast. If you're tired of living with shame and guilt and want simple steps to heal, find peace, and feel less alone after abortion, you are in the right place. Hey, I'm Brittany, wife, homeschooling mom of two, abortion recovery coach, and pro-life speaker. I learned the secret of how to find healing and redemption from my past. Spoiler alert, it's Jesus. If you're ready for tactical post-abortion healing tips, biblical truth, and strategies for grieving forward, then this podcast is for you. Let's crack open that Bible and get ready to receive the good news. Well, hey friend, I want to invite you right now to book an abortion recovery breakthrough call with me. During our time together, we are going to learn how to partner with God and go through the necessary steps for you to heal from your past decision or decisions of abortion once and for all. Head to brittanypoppy.com/coaching to get started. Well, hello everyone. We are back for another episode of the show today, and I have a special guest. Her name is Marianne, and I cannot wait for you to hear her story. This is going to be a very unique type of episode, and I'm really excited. So, Marianne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to get started and just hear from you. But before we kind of dive into the details, I would love if you would just kind of tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Marianne. I am married. I live in a small town in North Carolina, and I kind of travel back and forth between my husband and I have two little places that we kind of call home. And our main place, we live on a farm, and I like to rehab disabled animals. I work a full-time job. My husband works a full-time job, and then when I get off work, it's animals. So pretty simple, but also very busy at the same time, but I wouldn't change it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, that sounds so rewarding and so amazing. I have a friend who has a farm and loves to take care of animals too, and she just talks about just how what a gift it is to be able to do that. So that's so cool. Great to get to know a little bit about you. So you and I were talking kind of prior to booking this interview, and you told me some really cool things about your story. So
Yeah.
you're an adoptee. You've got
Mhm.
a really compelling story, and I would just love for you to go back to the beginning and tell us that story. Feel free to share whatever the Holy
Sure.
Spirit's leading you to share.
Absolutely. So I was adopted when I was a baby. My mother was a teen mom and also lived in a small town. At that time in the 80s, I'm old. I'm 39, but in 1986 when I was born, it was kind of like you don't do that. You don't have a child out of wedlock. So I was quietly placed for adoption and raised in a pretty good family. My adoptive mom, who was an angel, absolute angel, she died when I was 23 years old. She had cancer. And her deathbed wish was for me to find my family. She wanted me to find all the family that I'd never met. And about a year to the day after she passed, I found my mother's side. And they have been a huge part of my life ever since. Actually, they live where they live is where I have my second little place. And so I go there, I try to go about once a week, but I'm very close with my mother. And essentially, as far as when I was raised, very conservative home, very Christian home, very pro life, right? Pro life. No question about it. My parents were always like, we chose you, we wanted you, and regardless of how you got here, you were meant to be here, going to church every Sunday, all the things, right? Well, when mom passed, I was very young. I was 23. And actually, the anniversary of her death was just a few days ago. So that's been 16 years. That's hard to believe. But when she passed, unfortunately, I went into a tailspin, sort of a self discovery, trying to figure out who the heck I was because she was my anchor. Mom was my anchor. And, sorry, without her, it was rough. Um, that was just the one person that, for me, had always been just, like I said, my anchor, my steadfast person. And when she was gone, I spiraled. Made some very bad choices as far as relationships that I got into, commitments that I made that I should not have. Just being with the wrong people, being around the wrong people, and having such a void that she left behind. I was like, well, I just want someone to love me. I just want someone to care. And it ended up in this spiral, just down, down, down. And it was never, I never got into drugs. I never got into really heavy drinking, but I endured some pretty awful things. And as far as relationships go, and what I noticed around 2014, I will say, um, someone told me the words, "You were an accident." And that crushed me. Um, that person's opinion mattered. So when I heard that, I remember being at work. I was at work at the time. I've always worked. And I had to leave. I was working in banking at the time. I had to leave and go into the back, and I just lost it. I was just sobbing, and my makeup was running down my face. And I was like, this is the one thing I've always felt my whole life. I've already felt like I'm an accident or a mistake. And this person just told me in a very cold manner, you are an accident. You are, basically unwanted. And I'm just like, okay. And a shift took place at that point. I was like, well, I've been in these bad relationships. Someone just told me I was a mistake, and it hit me harder than probably anything anyone else has ever said to me in my life. And I thought, if there's a God, I don't want anything to do with him because all this Christian stuff, how I was starting to word it, I don't want to live this life anymore. It's done nothing for me but cause pain. And it was a gradual downward spiral to deciding, well, maybe my mother should have had an abortion because then I wouldn't have to be alive to hear, you're a mistake, you're an accident, you're not wanted. And I was just so wrecked. I was shattered. And I'm not sitting here saying that I have done everything right. I certainly have not. I have plenty of mistakes behind me. I've not always done things right. But when you tell someone that's adopted that they're a mistake or an accident, it hits us way harder than it will a lot of others. And I can tell you that that was a turning point for me going in the wrong direction. And so I got very bitter. I turned away from God. I decided I didn't want anything to do with it anymore because that's not the God I want to serve. That's how I felt at the time. Like, okay, you're going to let people call me a mistake. Pretty much goodbye. I was just like, okay, I don't care anymore. I just rebelled and just decided it wasn't something that I was interested in. And I feel like there were several times that I would just say to other people, I wish my mom would have had an abortion. I'd rather not be here. I'd rather not feel what I'm feeling. It's hard. And I don't think I ever told my mother, that's the one that's still living that had me. I don't think I've ever told her those feelings because I didn't want to hurt her. But I have told other people, like, I just wish she would have had an abortion. It would have been easier for me. It would have been easier for her. And it's really sad when you realize that you said those things about yourself and about your existence. And also, I remember just going home that day after that was said to me on social media. And I went home and I just begged. I was like, God, please just take me home. I don't want to be here anymore. People don't care. They don't want me around. Like, just, have had enough happen. Just take me home. Of course, that didn't happen. But I became very bitter. And then that's where I sort of decided, well, I'm just going to be pro choice because to me, it, I thought in my rational, what I thought was my rational mind at the time, well, then it's going to spare these kids from the type of pain that I had, or worse, having to live in foster care, and it's at the same time, who am I to play God and say, I can just terminate a life? Like, I've never had an abortion. However, I know people that have. And I was talking to a friend about it not long ago. And I said, when I had those views, I didn't really think through what I was actually talking about. I'm talking about a person playing God when God is the one that creates the life. And so it was years before I started to shift back in the right direction. But it was, as far as deciding, I think it was mainly doing my own research and actually, as hard as it was, viewing what actually happens, researching what actually happens, and saying, I can't support this. Even if I'm living a life where I have experienced an enormous amount of pain, some of it from my own decisions, some of it from things I didn't ask for, it's still, it's not my job or my right to decide when I live or die. That's God's job.
Yeah, that's powerful. And of course, we're talking because you did, do that research and come to a place of, wow, I've been wrong for so many years. At the same time, though, I do want to recognize that what was said to you is abhorrent, and how painful that must have been for you to hear that, because it's so not true. That's not what God's word says about you. God says that you are chosen and loved in His, regardless of our circumstances. And so I'm so sorry that that was said to you, but I'm so glad that you've, been able to find healing from that and find truth from that. I want to kind of go back a little bit. So I think a lot of us in the pro life movement, we talk to a lot of people who are pro choice and we hope to, convince them to see the truth. But we don't always hear a lot of people who grew up pro life and then all of a sudden they're like pro choice. So I would love to
Mm-hmm.
kind of hear, what did being pro choice look like for you? Like, was that a cause that you kind of dove headfirst in? Like, I am defending this side of what I believe now. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So I never really got super involved in like the political side. I just kind of kept my views to myself, other than a few friends and family members. But so I wasn't like diehard yelling at people saying you have to be pro choice. However, one thing I will say is that I have noticed a lot of the pro choice folks that I interacted with, like on Instagram or social media, I've noticed a deep anger in those people. Where I don't see it as much in those that are pro life. I'm not saying it's black and white, there's gray areas, but I have noticed a deep anger in a lot of those people. And it's like, if you don't believe what I believe, you're wrong and you're bad. Um, and almost like a hostile. And, I've watched debates on it, I've watched people argue back and forth. And more often than not, I see the pro choice people kind of stopped in their tracks because they they get kind of tripped up. It's hard to, because they're saying, well, life begins at this specific time, whereas us, pro life say it begins at conception. But like me, I have also seen those, when presented with the facts that are awful but true, as far as what actually takes place, when an abortion occurs, I've seen it kind of change certain people's minds, or at least get the wheels turning. And that's what happened to me. But I was never an angry, pushy person. I just kind of kept it to myself. And whenever I would get overwhelmed, sad, hurt, think about the past, I would say to myself the same thing. I wish my mom would have had an abortion. It would have been easier for all of us. Uh, and that's just the truth. I mean, as bad as it sounds, that was the truth.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for shedding some light on that. Um, And I agree with you. I see an anger too. And part of me wonders if that anger isn't stemming from a hurt related to the issue. So, like, kind of what you were talking about, not that you were necessarily displaying that anger, but you had a hurt happen to you that kind of brought you to that conclusion. So, it makes you wonder, are all of these people who are so staunchly pro-choice that they are like out on the sidewalk wearing the pink hats and holding the signs and marching angrily, are they just really really deeply hurting people? And maybe that's why those of us on the pro-life side have that compassion, because God, not that everybody who's pro-life is a Christian. I've met a lot of pro-life people who aren't Christians, but those of us who are of faith, I think God gives us that discernment to kind of see that hurt in other people and then kind of meet them, uh, maybe not always perfectly, but in a place of compassion and, trying to see, kind of peel back the layers of what hurt you so bad in life that's made you defend this so much.
Yeah. And I think that's where people like me can kind of come in and say, "Hey, I get it. I've been hurt too.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
know how it feels. I know how it feels to feel like I'm not supposed to be here. I don't want to be here. I know how that feels. It's just not a good feeling." And I think that almost every person that I've seen that gets super angry about that topic, I agree with you. I think there is an anger deep down and a hurt
Yeah.
and a deep hurt, something that's wounded them that they're not talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's why the power of prayer and just extending that compassion and love is so important, because we never know what war is going on in someone's head.
Oh, absolutely. I can
Yeah.
attest to that.
Amen. Yes, for sure. So you kind of talked a little bit about this already, about how you kind of made the switch to being pro-life. And you talked about how you did your own research. So, can you think back to like maybe some of the resources that you looked into that kind of opened up your eyes to some of the things that are going on, or tell us a little bit more about what that looked like?
Well, for starters, I know that he's in the news a lot right now, but Charlie Kirk's debates were one of the things that I really kind of got engaged in watching and listening
Yeah.
to.
Hmm.
In addition to that, just doing research online. I can't remember any specific website or other resource that I used. It was just doing my own research. I went on TikTok even, and I was like looking up how is an abortion performed, and it's it really disturbed me because it didn't hold anything back. It showed the whole process. It was not. It was like a kind of like an illustration, but things like that, and different things from like the medical community that just were kind of matter of fact. And I thought, pulling a baby apart, no, no, I can't support that.
Yeah.
And I hate to think that I ever did.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, because all I could think was that little baby feels that.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's torture. I mean, what must that even feel like? I don't want to know. But the fact that it's legal,
Yeah.
in some areas, it's kind of mind blowing to me once you know the facts. And I think years ago, I didn't want to know the facts.
Yeah.
I was hurt, I was angry, and I had made up my mind, and I was not willing to change it. And I
Hmm.
didn't care what anybody else had to say because I wasn't going to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you said that because I think that's one thing too that a lot of my listeners who have had abortions would relate to is we're not told that when we go into the facility to have our abortion, they do not tell us what the procedure does. We are not, we're, told things like, oh, that's just a clump of cells, not developed yet, no heartbeat, which isn't usually true. Um, won't feel pain. They don't go into detail about what exactly is happening during this procedure. So then, when women who I help, and like myself, who've gone through this, start to do our own research like you did, and we see what we have participated in, it's a wake up call like, wow, that is not what they told me they were doing. They did not tell me that that's literally what an abortion does. And so that's it, just why it's so important for us to be speaking the truth and for you to be sharing, your experience, and all of us to just really be making sure people know if you're going to support this, you better know exactly what it's doing, because this is not good, obviously, for the children that it affects and don't get to live in this world, but also for the women who then are faced with, wow, I did this to my own child. Now what? What do I do? So thank you so much for sharing that. And that kind of segues into this next question I have for you, which is, why do you think it's important for us to be speaking boldly for the pro-life movement and for truth?
Because we can save lives.
Mm,
There are there are lives that can be saved. There are people that can turn around and make a different decision than what they were going to do. And it's educating them, but it's beyond that too. It's like I said, saving a life and possibly helping people to want to know God and become Christians. Because again, I believe that a lot of these people that show so much anger are really hurt. And they don't want to listen to the facts, but when they hear the facts, how many of them are going to be like me? And they're going to be like, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is awful. This is like horrific. I don't want to partake in this, participate in supporting this. So I think that it's important for us to share the truth because you don't know how many lives are going to be saved. And think about, those babies that were going to be terminated, they'll be born, they'll live a life. They may do amazing things with that life, and they weren't even going to be here initially. So I think at the end of the day, my main takeaway would be you'd be saving lives.
mm. Amen. Yes, I love that. And I love so much you brought up Charlie Kirk a little bit ago. And I just love watching his videos, just sharing the truth and being bold for obviously all of the issues, but definitely the pro-life ones. He's one of very few people, I think, that can or that could effectively argue for the pro-life movement in a way that the person on the other end, if they're offended, it's only because they want to be offended and not because he offended them. And so I think we could all just take his example and look at how important it just truly is to not back down and to share that truth and do so in a loving way, because that's how we make a difference. I would love if you would kind of end here on just a word of encouragement. A lot of my listeners are struggling with shame and guilt for this past decision of abortion. Maybe they've had multiple abortions, but a lot of times they find the podcast because they're really struggling with shame and guilt. And not sure, how to find a way out. So I would love if you would just kind of leave from your own experience. Of course, while it's different, you experienced a lot of shame based on what was said to
Oh
you.
gosh,
So,
yes,
yes. So I would
yes.
love if you would just share a word of encouragement for the listener today.
Oh, absolutely. So I've never had an abortion. I've never even been pregnant that I know of. Um, However, I do have a lot of shame in my past from other things, in particular, some of my bad decisions and bad relationship choices, following along with things that I shouldn't have because I wanted so badly to be accepted and to be loved. And there's a lot of shame that I've dealt with from that. So, though it's not the same, I would say that on the other side of that shame is grace if you open your heart to God and you open your heart to Christ because He's there and He never turns you away. Even though I turned away from Him and basically said, I want nothing to do with you anymore. You've let me down. You don't care. You're not real. All the things. I said all that and worse, which I won't repeat on here. But like I was in a bad place. I was not who I needed or wanted to be. I was very bitter. I was very sad. What I can say is on the other side of shame, there's always grace waiting for you. And there's always forgiveness. And there's always being able to turn that shame into helping other people and saving other lives, whether it's someone that's wanting to have an abortion or someone that wants to end their life and commit suicide. There are people whose lives you can impact by making the right choices going forward. And I think, again, you're still saving a life. You may have made mistakes in your past. I know that's hard. But going forward, you could still save other lives.
Amen. That's so good. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Love that so much. If someone is listening right now and they want to follow along or get in touch with you, just they're interested in your story, is there a way they can do that?
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook. It's under Marmar. I know that sounds funny. It's Marmar. That's my nickname. I don't use my real name on social media because of my job. But basically, my Facebook is a lot of animals. I rehab disabled animals. So you'll see a lot of funny animal reels and pictures, but that is how people can follow along with me.
Awesome. Yeah, you might have someone reach out to you who is impacted by your story. So thank you for sharing that. And Marianne, thank you so much for coming on the show and just for being so vulnerable with my listeners and sharing so much truth. I'm so grateful for you, grateful that we connected, and am grateful that you took time out of your day to share that with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hey, beautiful friend, I hope that you found comfort from today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and leave a written review in Apple Podcast or a starred review wherever you're listening? It truly encourages me to know that this podcast is helping you. Also, if you're looking for more support from other women who have walked the same walk as you, please join us in our free Facebook community, Abortion Recovery for Christian Women. Please know that I pray for you daily and I am here for you. I'll meet you back in a few days for another episode, but until then, take care and God bless.